Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe got the seal of approval at the Sask Party convention last week in Saskatoon. But what's Moe's path to winning back support in the province's two biggest cities? Joining us now to unpack that question and This Week in Politics is our weekly political panel. Murray Mandryk is a local political columnist, and Alexander Quon covers the Saskatchewan legislature for us here at CBC. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I feel like I'm suddenly losing my voice. I'm not getting emotional, but it's nice to see you both.
I'd rather you be emotional when I hear so.
I want to start with the story we've been hearing about in the news this morning. Major projects, nation-building projects, big gap in the middle, nothing for Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or Alberta. Murray, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know if this really advances the solution for either the federal government or for Scott Moe. We go down the rabbit hole once again of the difference between the West and the East. And our major projects are all related to the oil industry, the movement of bitumen, issues like that weren't announced. So this just reignites the whole political debate that's been very difficult. Now, maybe that's a good thing for Scott Moe because it solidifies the base of a Conservative Party that doesn't particularly like the Liberals, and it re-identifies the enemy. But there was progress being made on other fronts, and we have big issues as a country in terms of trade and other things. Now is obviously not the time, as if it ever was, to basically be a house divided in terms of the issues facing the nation, and they directly affect Saskatchewan. But the problem being is that that issues like this do reignite it. Now, it's a horrible thing for the Liberals, at least in terms of votes out west, because it gets them nowhere. But I don't know if they're necessarily concerned. So from a political standpoint, even if we make the argument that pipelines are not economically viable from a political standpoint, this drags us back into the tiresome old arguments that I think we're probably going to rehear. And I don't think they're really good for anybody.
This morning I was reading Carla Beck's response to the announcement. She said, as your next premier, I would make sure that we're getting these projects. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. She basically said that either the federal government isn't listening or Scott Moe isn't making the case. Do you think that that's fair criticism?
No, but most opposition criticism isn't particularly fair. It's just advantageous. And in this particular case, she understands full well Scott Moe's between the devil and the deep blue sea. He has no control over what the federal governments do, and he can make the case even stronger. Lord knows Scott Moe isn't making the case. That's just silly. He screamed bloody murder about the lack of these projects, and specifically what. Now she can make the case that he's ineffective, but I don't know how she can make the case that she's going to be any more effective. But once again, this is why the argument gets so tiresome and so difficult, because it just gets us nowhere.
Okay, let's talk about Scott Moe. Alexander, what happened at the Sask Party convention last weekend?
Yeah, the Sask Party had their convention last week, and that meant policy proposals and, most importantly, a leadership review of Scott Moe. Now, the numbers are in. What we have been told is that the number of support or percentages is above 80%. I tried to get more details from the party officially, and they say they only disclose the exact percentage if the result is less than 80% support. What I have been told by a source is that it is actually around 81%. It's very low 80s, and it is worth noting that during the last convention, the Sask Party were quick to tell media at the time that Scott Moe got 97% support.
What does the 80% number tell you, Murray?
80% ain't as good as 90%. It's observations like that make you iconic, obviously. But it's ridiculous to ponder these numbers. But they do mean numbers. This is a little binary because it takes away the notion. If he had received 90% or something close to last time, and I think that number is around 90%, there'd be no discussion anymore about his leadership and whether he's sincere about staying around for the next election or not. There's obviously people in the party that don't think that, and because 20% of them, I'm guessing, or close to 20% of them basically said, you know what, we're looking for someone else. And there were people that might be familiar to us as names put forward as people that might want to take a run at leadership sometime, that were kind of popping in and out of the convention about the time the vote was taking place, and that's a bit of a clue. So one of the big problems for Scott Moe is it sort of reignites an issue that I think he'd really want to put to bed so he can move ahead with other things, and that's whether his leadership is in play. To be quite frank, I'm still going to be a little surprised if he leads the Sask party into the next election. A lot will depend on what happens in the next year or two and how successful he is, and whether there actually is better alternatives. But it also puts into play what direction is this party going in and where is that coming from? If it's coming from the right, and there's certainly a lot of indications based on some of the issues being raised on the floor of the convention, like Bill 137, like the sovereignty question, that's coming from that, I actually think that's less problematic for it, because the right has no place to go, and they're not really as much of a factor, and a lot of it is sort of rural-based anyway. I don't think it's affecting the city vote as much as it is. But if this is a substantial number of people coming from the city vote that are basically saying Scott Moe has to go, then that's a problem, because he's got a whole issue right now of trying to not just re-win the cities, but make sure it doesn't spread to the smaller cities like PA and Moose Jaw, the bedroom communities, etc., or maybe even smaller cities like Yorkton and North Belfast. Because if that's happened, we're talking government change, and that's the challenge for Scott Moe, and that might be why people are questioning whether we need a leadership that's coming from elsewhere. I just don't know if people know within the Sask party what they want is a leader. There's also the reality this is a 5-term Sask party government, so it's going to fall slightly. Yet there seems to be this dissatisfaction. You're in government for 5 terms. How dissatisfied can you be?
Okay. You talked a little bit about the cities. What was talked about at the convention when it comes to, I mean, the NDP won the cities in the election. What did Scott Moe have to say about that?
Well, we didn't get to talk to Scott Moe before the convention, but when we did speak to some ministers, they were saying that it was going to be a big focus of the weekend to talk about how they retake Regina, how they retake Saskatoon, because they are at least aware of the fact that in those municipal areas, they are not getting the seats that they need. So it was a big factor in what their plan was and what their discussions were at the convention. Okay.
Are the cities key?
Absolutely, and they're critical. How to get them back is the real key question. And there are certain issues that from a conservative agenda you can bridge. I think the whole issue that the Sask party may be winning on is sort of what to do about the drug problem and the mandatory treatment, where even the NDP are sort of talking about it in at least broad terms. That might be one issue where city voters, their voters, would come out and say, yeah, it's time for us to get tough and tough love. But I don't necessarily think that's all the issues. I don't know how the Venn diagram covers off the homeless issue. A lot of people with drug problems are homeless, but people see homelessness as sort of a different issue where they want a more sympathetic, softer approach, and that might be one. I think the elephant in the room is the issue that the NDP are now raising related to the cost of living, particularly in the cities. And I'm talking about rent in apartments, and as Alex and I were just talking about how absolutely ridiculous it is in terms of how much rent in the cities has increased in the last 5 years. Those are meat and potato issues that are a bigger deal in Regina and Saskatoon than maybe they are elsewhere. And I don't know what the government is doing to really effectively address that. I don't know what the NDP are providing as an alternative, because maybe they go whole heart on rent control, but I don't know if that necessarily is something they want to do or something that would even be an effective solution anyway. But at this particular point, what they're doing is hammering on the government for being ineffective. And I think that's registering a fair bit. So unless we see very quickly the government start to address those issues, I don't see them being all that successful in sort of recapturing the city seats that they need to be secure. And I don't know how you do that in one term, or certainly 3 years left in the term.
Okay, I really want to touch quickly before we go on what the heck is going on in Richmound, Alex.
Yes. So we had some residents of Richmound come to the legislature this week, essentially urging the provincial government to provide financial support to the village of Richmound. There hasn't been a formal request. The mayor that I spoke with the mayor earlier this week, he said there will be a likely one coming. Essentially, the village has racked up legal bills for legal consultation, upwards of $75,000. They're essentially saying, we're a village of 120 people. We can't afford that. We need some help from the provincial government. Premier Moe said, that's something we can do, but it really is on the people who were affected and the village to get this all fixed and right.
Okay, well, we will see what happens in all of this. Gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming in this morning and breaking down this week in politics.
Yep. Thank you. Good luck in your future.
Thank you.
Thank you.